When I first saw that GE came out with this new smart scale, I wasn't really sure because my wife and I have the older model and we really enjoyed it. There's 8 electrodes on this one, 8 electrodes on the older one, more than 50 body measurements on the newer one, and more than 50 body measurements on the older one. So what exactly changed? At first I thought GE basically took the same scale, moved the screen onto the handle and called it a new model, but then I started using them back to back. And this is where I did change my mind a little bit because there is one difference between these two that sounds completely insignificant, but in actual everyday use, it does change the entire experience. And weirdly enough, it has almost nothing to do with the 50 plus measurements. But before I show you that, here's something you need to understand about these scales. Because if you're expecting either one of them to tell you perfectly accurate body fat percentage, that's not actually what these are for. And once you understand what they're actually good at, the difference between these two makes a lot more sense. So what both of these actually do. First, these are not just these normal bathroom scales. Both of them use an 8 electrode system. So instead of only standing on centers underneath your feet, you're also grabbing the handle, and that gives the scale contact points at both your hands and your feet, which allows it to estimate your full body composition. And this is where you start getting way more information than just your weight. I remember the first time I tested anything like this was actually at a gym. And so with these, you're getting things like body fat percentage, muscle mass, skeletal muscle, a lot of different things. And here's another thing. If I'm using the scale under similar conditions every morning, and over the next month my body fat trend is gradually moving down while my muscle mass is staying stable or going up, that's useful information. So I don't necessarily make every conclusion over a single reading, but I do watch the trend. That's personally how I use it. And when it comes to that basic job, both of these are doing very similar things, which brings us to the actual difference. So let me show you the older GE first. So with this one, I step on the scale, I grab that handle, and I wait for the measurement. Once everything finishes, the information is displayed right down here on the scale. Now this display is actually more useful than you might think. Once you complete the initial setup, it can show 7 key measurements directly on the scale. You get your weight, your BMI, body fat, body water, muscle mass, bone mass, and visceral fat. Okay, so you don't have to pull out your phone every single time you use it. That part is really nice. But look at where the information is. It is on the floor. So I'm standing all the way up here and everything I want to read is between my feet. Now switch over to the new model. Same basic process. Step on, grab the handle, let it take the measurement, except now the screen is right here. So the newer model puts a 5.3 inch color display directly onto the handle. And this is the difference I thought I wouldn't care about, but I was wrong, because you're already holding this handle anyway. So instead of taking the measurement and then looking all the way down at the floor, your information is sitting right in front of you. No bending over and no squinting down. It just feels a lot more natural in my opinion. That sounds almost too simple to be the main difference, but in actual use, it's probably the first thing you're going to notice. Now, here's where I got skeptical again, because when you see this bigger color screen and completely different looking handle, you automatically think, okay, so this must be giving me way more advanced measurements. And the answer is not really, at least not in the way you might expect. The core concept is still very similar. 8 electrodes on both, full body composition analysis on both, and 50 plus metrics on both. It also has that Bluetooth app syncing as well. So I wouldn't choose one because you think the other is somehow just a basic scale. They are both advanced body composition scales, and I really do like both of these so far. The biggest difference is how the information is delivered to you. That's why I think it depends heavily on what kind of user you are. If you're someone who takes your measurement and then immediately opens the app anyway, you may not care nearly as much about where the screen is. But if you want to step on the scale, take the measurement, and quickly look at your results and move on with your morning, having the screen in your hand is extremely convenient. And honestly, the app is where both of these become much more useful. Both use this GE Fit Profile app. And instead of just seeing one measurement and forgetting about it, you can save your history and actually watch what happens over time. That means instead of wondering, did I actually make progress this month? You can look at that trend for yourself. And maybe your weight barely changed, but your muscle mass moved. Things like that, okay? That's what I tend to look at for myself. Newer model also lists compatibility with Apple Health, Google Fit, and a lot of different apps, okay? So if you're already tracking health data elsewhere, it can fit into the ecosystem instead of living completely by itself. Now, this is one of the bigger questions that I did have, and it was regarding whether multiple people can share this scale, and the answer is yes. I would expect that at this level. You do not need a completely separate scale for every person in the house. The Fit Profile system allows multiple users to keep their information separate. So if you and your spouse both use it, like my wife and I do, or you have several people in the family trying to track progress, you're not all sharing one giant pool of measurements. Your history stays tied to your own profile. The older model does have automatic user recognition, which is useful because once everybody is set up, the scale can make the whole process feel a lot more automatic. Now, another difference I did notice is this newer model does bring the measurements in around 10 to 15 seconds. And in general, I think the whole design feels more focused around making the measurement feel self-contained. You step on, you grab the handle, you wait for the reading, and your information is already sitting in your hand. The older model still works very similarly, but it feels more like a traditional smart scale with an advanced handle attached to it. The newer one feels like the handle has become the center of the experience. That's probably the simplest way I can describe the difference. So which one of these does make more sense in my opinion? After using both and using the older model quite longer, I actually think that this decision is pretty straightforward. If what you care about is getting the 8 electrode full body analysis, then all of the extra composition metrics and the long-term tracking, the older GE already gives you a very complete set. And I actually like that 7 of the important metrics can still be displayed directly on the scale because you still aren't forced to open your phone every time. However, if you really care about the everyday usability of the scale, the newer model is noticeably nicer. And again, I did not expect the handle display to matter as much as it does, but putting a big color screen right where you're already looking makes the entire process easier in my opinion. You're not choosing between one scale that gives you data and one that doesn't. They both give a ton of data. You're really choosing between 2 different ways of interacting with that data. And in my opinion, the older model keeps the information where you normally expect it, which is on the scale. The newer one brings that information up to you. And after using them back to back, that's the difference I would actually base my decision on. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope this video helped and have a great day.